What up, folks? We're on call number, I think this is 6, but we're on the next call. And today I want to talk about sexiness. Sexiness. And that's why I'm wearing clothes. I feel sexy in these clothes. I always feel cool. This jacket's faux leather, but I always feel cool wearing my leather jacket. And I like wearing jewelry. I don't have very much jewelry, but I find I'm attracted to androgyny. And when I'm expressing more androgynously of like both elements of both genders, I feel a lot more sexy. And I like mesh and fishnet a lot. I feel sexy in this shirt, and it feels good to feel sexy. And one thing too about I don't know if people who have watching this have worn a leather jacket or not, but I notice wearing whether it's a leather jacket or just anything where I'm like really dressing like myself, it forces me to own it too, because like you can't wear a big outfit and be timid if you're out and about. When you wear a big outfit, it like forces you into it. Anyways, yeah, I wanted to talk about sexiness and what it means to feel sexy, what it means to be sexy. Because it's fun to be sexy. It feels good. It feels good to be sexy. The first time I started, like, it really clicked into place. Sexiness clicked into place in a new way for me. Was I was actually at Pride in Seattle a couple years ago. I was with a friend, and I was at a drag competition, and it was like an amateur drag competition. And I remember there was a bunch of people in it of all different genders and all different like shapes, sizes, and there was plenty of people in the drag competition who were performing and strutting, and they had these beautiful bodies, and they were boring to watch. They were flat. It felt like watching a synthoid or a robot or something. And then the person who I don't remember if she won or got second place, but she made it to the finals, and she was my favorite, and I found her the sexiest by far, or at least one of the sexiest. She was like short. She was really overweight. So she was like short and like thick and just like chunky, and didn't have like a body that like would be in a magazine. So like she didn't have a body that mainstream society would call sexy. And even physically, like I don't know that I was attracted to her physically, but her attitude was so good. She like clearly believed she was sexy. She was just like flaunting her body. She was using her body, and was just owning the stage. Her presence was so powerful, and that's when I realized like, wow, it doesn't actually matter. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, of course, looks play a factor. There's like psychology behind it that being attractive helps you in life. I get that, but the point I'm making is like, if you want to be sexy, it's not about how you look or your body or body type or anything like that. It's about your confidence, and it's about your internal scape and how you own it and how you present yourself. Also, I need to take off this jacket because it's getting really hot in here, but I wanted to wear it. So now I'm just in my mesh tank top. Okay, cool. So yeah, so that's the point that I wanted to start with, and I think a question, maybe a good question to start with is how. Okay, let me put it this way. To me, when it's sexy, there's two elements to it. One is just like when people are comfortable in their skin. There's something inherently sexy about confidence. Just somebody who feels confident, who feels comfortable, they feel solid in themselves, they're not looking for approval, they're not like looking for other people to tell them the answer. No, they know who they are, they know what they like, they know what they think. That that um that takes a while to get to. That's not an easy place to get to. That's something we're all working towards. And like I can speak on my own journey. I'm still working towards that for sure, and probably always will be. But like things that I found useful are like, I mean, I don't know. You have to live life. You have to travel. You have to like quit your job. You have to get into a painful relationship. You have to have life experience. You have to, but also things I did more deliberately were like forming my own opinions, really discovering what I think and what I believe and what my values are, finding the art that I liked, figuring out what my aesthetic taste was, what my style was, and just getting to know all the elements that make up Mike. because ultimately that's what people are attracted to. They're attracted to people who are themselves, and that's how I feel like. I find myself, the more I get to know myself, the more eccentric I'm watching myself become, and maybe everybody has that in them, but it's just a matter of like really unveiling who we really are. So anyways, that's one side, and I can talk about that more, but that's a lifelong journey. But the other side that's more, that I can speak to more, and that's more like maybe actionable, at least in the domain in which we're speaking towards, is knowing yourself sexually, knowing your sexual vibe. And so, uh, yeah, knowing your sexual vibe. Because when we're, okay, so let me give an example. Well, actually, I'll say something and then I'll give an example. When I find myself most sexy, and when I find other people most sexy, yes, like confidence helps, that's a baseline, but really it's like when they know who they are sexually. Like when it feels like they're inhabiting this like sexual world or sexual vibe that is so specific and specifically them too. It's like it's kind of like the same thing like you don't if you're listening to music and you listen to an artist and you're like, wow, that is such a unique sound, like they're dialed into who they are, they clearly know who they are. There's something like artistically inspiring and respectable about that, versus if you listen to a top 40 hit, and don't get me wrong, I like pop music, it's got its place, but if you listen to a top 40 hit, they all sound the exact same, and it's like there's no who in the thought when you're listening is like, who is this, like who who is, there's no authenticity behind this, there's no artistry behind this, it's just like a sequence of catchy sounds that sounds like every other pop song, and it's not compelling. When you hear a musical artist that like has a vibe that is compelling. So sexual vibe, same thing. Like when you meet someone, even if they're just like in normal clothes, they don't have to be wearing a mesh tank top, if they're just in normal clothes, some people, when I make eye contact with them, I meet them. Like this happened to me the other day. I was at a modeling gig and I was modeling for this guy who he's making a painting and he was taking pictures of me to paint it. And then a student of his came in and a student also was making a painting, and I just made eye contact with the student, and I was just like, whoa, this guy's incredibly sexual. Like I was just like, wow, I can feel it. Like I'm afraid to make eye contact for too long with this guy because it would probably turn into like some energetic sex scene happening. I just had that thought, and even though he was dressed like pretty normally, he was dressed like an artist, but like he was dressed pretty normally, I could feel he had a very distinct sexual vibe. It was like he was operating on a sexual channel, and I could feel it. And so I think if everybody gets to know themselves sexually, there is a sexual channel that they can operate on that is theirs, and you don't have to broadcast it all the time. But still, like when you know yourself sexually, even if you're not broadcasting it to the world, like people can feel it. Like dude, you can feel it. You can really feel it if you're walking down the street and you see a couple people. At least in my experience, I can tell. Like obviously not with 100% accuracy, but in my belief, I can perceive when people are like more sexually open and repressed, or sorry, sexually closed and repressed, or like sexually open and know themselves sexually. And to me, when somebody knows themselves sexually and you can feel that, there's like a power that emanates from them. So, how do you get to know yourself sexually? How do you figure out what your vibe is? So, I can talk about I'll talk about my journey a little bit into this. For me, this inquiry really began when I was working at a sex shop. I was working at a sex shop in Seattle, and it was well, I stopped working there actually because of quarantine, COVID, pandemic happened. But when I was working there, it was a gay sex shop, and primarily served the gay leather community. And the leather community, it's kind of complex what it is, but it's essentially, it's a whole world. If you're not gay or you don't know what it is, it's really interesting. It's a whole world. There is an aesthetic to this world. There's a way people dress. There's a value code. There's types of relationships. Like it's like a whole subculture that is incredibly distinct, and it was really fascinating. Anyways, we served other people too, but that was the main culture that we were serving. But all kinds of people went into that sex shop. Anyways, because I worked there, we sold a bunch of really sexy clothes for guys, which is where I got this actually. But we sold a bunch of really sexy clothes for guys, and so eventually I just started to try on clothes. I was just like trying on clothes and discovering what felt sexy to me. And I tried on enough clothes, and I got to notice like, this feels sexy, this doesn't. And then I just started buying clothes that felt sexy. So all of a sudden I had these like random things in my wardrobe that I thought were sexy. And then the next thing that happened was I started to make outfits. I was like, oh, I have this and I have this. Let me put it together. It was like, oh, wow, this outfit is sexy. And then I would make so essentially two categories of outfits that I discovered that I found really sexy when I wore them. One was something like this. Like I love black clothes. I like mesh and fishnet. I like leather. I like the like bad boy kind of like gothy aesthetic, like the fallen angel aesthetic, where like there's something like dark and sexual and sinister. Like I like that look. I find it really sexy. Another look I was finding sexy that I was cultivating was around like when I'm effeminate. I find it really sexual when I'm dressed effeminately. Like I like gender bending. I like portraying myself in a way where I'm showcasing like attributes that speak to both genders. Like I have a pretty muscular upper body, and I like showing off my like masculine upper body, and I like having like feminine legs, and I don't own a pair of heels, but if I did, I would think that would be hot. And I like wearing makeup, and there's something about like just giving an image that's like in some ways confusing because it has masculine attributes that are sexy and feminine attributes that are sexy. There's something I really love about that, and there's a way for me to portray a deep inner femininity inside of me that wants to be portrayed sexually. And I found a couple other categories of aesthetic within myself also, but those were two that I found. So then after that, well, actually this was happening kind of concurrently, but I also started making playlists. Well, first of all, I love making playlists. And then I started making playlists that were sex playlists. And lo and behold, I just kept doing it. I would listen to songs and be like, oh, this one belongs in this sex playlist. This song is hot. This belongs in this sex playlist. Eventually, I have maybe like 10 sex playlists right now. Not a crazy amount, but a decent amount. But what's interesting about that is every song in all my sex playlists I find sexy, but they all cast a different vibe. So I have like one sex playlist is called Fallen Angel. So that like kind of speaks to the outfit I was talking about. It's like dark. It's like Marilyn Manson or Nine Inch Nails, that like type of vibe that's like dark and intense. Like I like that. I find it sexy. But I have another totally different playlist that is called Moon Trance, and that's more like feels like it reminds me of like a siren on the water in the night, a beautiful woman howling to the moon and evoking like this deep sexual energy, causing men to come and yearn. So that's like in a kind of like earthy like playlist. Like one artist I love is Dea Dova. She's like a Australian woman. Anyway, and like yeah. So anyways, totally different vibe, but I also find it sexy. And I've got a bunch of different vibes like that. I could speak to all of them, but that's two of them. Right. Okay. So then I had outfits going. I had playlists going, and then for myself, the next step that I took was I started to create characters. And I'm not saying anybody has to do this. This just happened to be a form of expression that I found interesting to go into. But I was like, oh, interesting. I have some part of my own sexual being wants to dress this way, and it likes this kind of music. And then I started to actually like make a character around it and get to know like different personas within myself. That was an inquiry that I got pretty deep into, and I actually haven't been in that inquiry for a little while now, but when I was in there, I was really starting to get to know, it felt like different, if my sexuality was this landscape, I was categorizing it into pockets and just getting to know it through these different pockets. And so yeah, I would make a character, and then I would do different forms of art through that character. I would write to it or write from it. I would make songs from it. Just getting to know what that character, who it was, what it liked, what it wanted, and how it related to my sexuality and its own sexual channel. And then the most intense thing I did, I was working with a mentor at the time, a sexual mentor, and she had me, there were two very distinct characters I was developing at that time. One was this like kind of fallen angel character, and then another was, it felt like a woman, was just very feminine energy, and she was, I named her Precious. There was something inside of me that felt like a woman. She was like young and emergent, but was like clearly not just feminine, but really did feel like a woman. And she was really interesting. A lot of me getting to know her, like she enjoyed the male gaze. She loved having attention. She loved being sexy. She loved being devoured by other people's eyes. She was a bit of a tease, though. Anyways, so I was working with a mentor, and she gave me this assignment that was so insane. I wrote a long note to both of those characters, like really getting to know the character and giving my writing a note like truly from the inside of Mike to each of these characters. So I had one long note for the Fallen Angel character, one long note for Precious, and I wrote it in big font. And then this mentor of mine, she had me go to downtown Seattle where I live, and then staple these big notes on a big, like, right in the middle of downtown Seattle, or Capitol Hill, but right in the middle of Seattle, public place. And then I walked away, and then I watched people read it, and it was so intense. And like it was interesting. I talked to one guy who read it, and he was like moved by it. He's like, wow, like I have something like that in me too. And anyway, so it was really a powerful experience. But the main reason it was powerful was also because it like gave life and validation to these different characters inside of me. So that's a bit of my story. But the way I want to relate it back to something a bit more actionable, because I don't expect everybody to take interest in that form of inquiry, is in order to get to know your own sexual vibe, I'd say like the easiest place to start. Number one place to start is, music. Number one place to start is music. Like if you made a playlist, just simply one playlist, and it's called Songs I Find Sexy. Songs I Find Sexy. And just put songs in that playlist, you would discover a lot about your sexual vibe. There's something about certain songs that you will find like get you in the mood to be sexual, or make your body feel aroused, or whatever it might be. And yeah, if you compile those, you'll start to, even if you don't start to see patterns and go in that deep, just the act of doing that, you will start to get to know how your sexuality relates to a different form of your creativity, which is your taste in music. And that's a great place to start. And then already there, you're starting to get to know yourself sexually. You're starting to get to know your sexual vibe. Then, if you want to break it down further, you could make sub-playlists. Like, what if you had 2 sex playlists? What if you had, like, slow sex and more, like, faster, intense sex playlist? Right? Like, even then, you're starting to get to know your own sexual vibe better. And you can obviously make it more granular. You can make 3 playlists. Whatever. Then the next thing I would say is, what makes you feel sexy? What clothes make you feel sexy? And this one is tricky, because I know that in my experience, let me take a sip of tea here. In my experience, this was hard to discover because a lot of what I thought made me feel sexy was just like the way the culture I was born into viewed men as being sexy. And like, there is something to it, but like for me, I used to think being sexy meant for me like being a buff guy and wearing gym clothes or something. And it's not that I don't find that vibe sexy, but a lot of that for me was inherited from my upbringing and my culture. And it took a while for me to find like, okay, there is something in there for me, but there's also like this whole other world. So what do you find sexy? What, like, you don't even have to buy clothes. Go to a Buffalo Exchange, or like a Crossroads, go to a thrift store, a clothing thrift store, or wherever, and just put on clothes that you think are sexy. You don't even have to buy them. Like, spend an hour there and just try on clothes that you find sexy and see what you discover. Maybe it'll be you like wearing really nice clothes. Maybe you like wearing a shirt and tie if you are masculine presenting, or maybe you like wearing a nice black dress or something. Or maybe you do like more edgy clothes with rips in them, whatever. But the point is, splurge. Take yourself there and let yourself discover what you find sexy. Now, if you want to take it to the next level, go to a sex store. Men will probably have to go to a gay sex store to do this, or anyone dressing masculinely. Anyone dressing more femininely, you could do this at probably any sex store. But go to a sex store and buy sexy clothes for yourself. Like maybe buy lingerie, underwear, whatever. But that will take it to the next level. How do you feel? What makes you feel sexy when you're actually dressing up? right? And to me, this speaks to like the power of aesthetic. Aesthetic is really powerful. Aesthetic is something that creates a vibe, it creates an energy, it creates a character, and when you can discover the aesthetic that you find sexual to, or that makes you feel sexy to present through, you might learn about the sexual vibe that you enjoy. Now, you could do this with any different type of art form too. Like, for example, I'll get more into this in the near future, but like erotic art, you could get into like what kind of art do you find sexy, or if you got into erotic fiction, that's more fantasy, and I'm gonna get into that in a later video. But even still, like, you know, what kind of erotic fiction do you find sexy? The more ways you can, I guess I'll put it this way. I found that I know myself better sexually the more forms of creativity I'm able to combine with my sexuality. Right? Because, like, in the first video, I was saying sexuality is not an act, it's an energy. Sexuality is an energy. And we are all creative beings, and we all have different creative outlets that we create through, and we all have different creative outlets that we, intake, right? So we produce creativity, and we also intake creativity. And again, sexuality is an energy, so if you can figure out the type of sexual energy that you like to create through and all of your different outlets, you will learn about your sexuality. And if you find like the type of creative outlets that you like to, I can't think of the word. I keep thinking ingest, but that's not totally right. I'll say ingest. But the type of media that you like to ingest that you find sexual, and I'm not talking just porn, like you can get way more creative than that, like I've been speaking to. But yeah, then, anyways, then that will help you learn about your sexuality also. My partner gave me this really a wonderful gift. She gave me a gift of $100 to spend buying her lingerie, and in a way that I thought was sexy. And that was incredibly informative. That helped me discover, like, oh, cool, this is another element of my own sexual makeup. So let me close out here and just say that the main moral of the story I have here is, if you want to be sexy, the best way to be sexy is to know who you are sexually. And the best way to know who you are sexually is to explore different avenues of creativity as both an ingester and a creator, to explore how different avenues of creativity interact with your own sexual energy. That will help you to know yourself better sexually. And in the same way as, like, if you want to get to know your anger better, and you want to like own your anger better, that's something I've also done to different degrees. But like, what kind of music evokes your anger, right? What kind of like art evokes your anger? What kind of movies evoke your anger? You know, it's the exact same thing. Anger is an energy. Sexuality is an energy. You can get to know that energy through creative channels. That's the point I'm trying to make. Oh yeah, and the last creative channel I'll say, which I brought up other times before, is dance. Like, what does it mean for you to dance sexy? And again, you would probably learn so much about yourself if you've never done this before if you put on a 2-song playlist. Oh man, yeah, this would be great. This would be really great. If you make your sex playlist, yeah, and then you pick 2 songs you like from your sex playlist, and you set up a video, and you record yourself dancing sexually to those songs, and you can delete the video afterwards. That would help you learn about your sexual energy too. Cool. So yeah, point here, to be sexy, you have to know who you are sexually. To know who you are sexually, I find an effective way is to explore avenues of creativity and how that interacts with your sexual energy. Great. I do want to go into fantasy and erotic imagination. I might do that on the next video or sometime soon, but I have a lot to say there also, and that's a really interesting avenue. Cool. All right, thanks for listening, everybody. Let me do my spin. That was pretty smooth, right? All right, I'll see you guys tomorrow.